Hi, I'm Karl Konrad and I started Australian Immigration Law Services some 22 years ago. Our team helps those looking to live, work and study in Australia to get their visas. We take on the simplest cases and the most complex for our clients both locally and around the world. If you want to learn more about visas and requirements and get important updates, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Today I'll be talking about getting the 491 visa from the Australian Capital Territory. If you haven't already watched, we've done a lot of videos about the 491 visa and you can head to the description below to find the links to them. Now a little bit about the 491 visa for those who are new. It requires you to fulfill both the Immigration Department requirements as well as any additional requirements set by the state or regional area that you are applying for. Every state or territory gets to make its own rules, and these are called nomination requirements. For example, one state may require you to be already living in that state to be eligible, while another state may give you preference for having graduated from a university in that state. They also have different lists of eligible occupations for their different visas. Despite the additional requirements, the 491 visa has the largest occupation lists, and meeting nomination requirements gives you an additional 15 points on the points test. There are two main sections to this video. The first section will be about the ACT's nomination requirements, and the second section will be about how to apply. It is quite a tedious process. The ACT government requires you to complete an entire application process with them before the Immigration Department even sends you their invitation. You will need to have either an occupation on the ACT Critical Skills List or be a holder of a 457 or 482 visa. The ACT Critical Skills List has currently 85 occupations on it, but be careful, this list can change without notice. They are not as restrictive as you might think, and you will find marketing, design, finance, teaching occupations, and so forth on the list. The different occupations are each subjected to a limited number of places each month. For example, finance managers are allocated less than 5 places a month, and software engineers have an allocation of less than 40 places. Although the critical skills lists are meant to support the COVID-19 response, medical professions have less than 10 places a month. The ACT seems much more keen on ICT and software professionals. If your occupation is not on the critical skills list, you are eligible if you hold a 457 or 482 visa. You must have worked in Canberra for your sponsoring ACT employer for at least 3 months whilst holding your 457 or 482 visa. Your visa must also be eligible for a further 12 months from the date you submit your interest to the ACT. You must be residing and working in Canberra for at least 3 months immediately before you submit your interest to the ACT and continue to do so. You must be considered to be settled in Canberra, and short visits are not considered towards fulfilling the 3-month requirement. You are not eligible if you or your partner or children are living or working in another state or territory. At various times, often nominations can be closed for offshore applicants, and this needs to be checked carefully before you try and apply. Currently, the nomination process is closed to people who live overseas. Work must be for a minimum of 20 hours every week for at least 13 weeks. Employment must be continuous and it must be paid work. If you take paid time off through annual leave, medical or maternity leave, that time is still considered as paid. If your employment does not offer you paid time off, unpaid days can be considered to meet your work requirement if you have a medical certificate. If you need, you can work with one or more employer to make up the minimum of 20 hours. A few more conditions. Your ACT employer must be actively operating in the ACT for at least 12 months. The terms and conditions of your employment must be in line with Australian legislation, and your salary needs to be comparable with the market salary rate. The market salary rate is the salary that your occupation commands within the area that you are working. This can be evidenced through job data or job advertisements. If you're working in Canberra but are employed by an interstate employer, your employer must have an office or branch located within 30 minutes of Canberra. You can also be self-employed, but you must have an ABN and at least 12 months of business activity within the ACT. Your total income must be at least $500 per week of self-employment. If your nominated occupation is an ANSCO Group 1 or 2 occupation, you are required to have a level of Proficient English or higher. To find out what ANSCO group your occupation is in, search for your occupation on the ANSCO website. For example, an accountant is in Group 2, and you will need to provide an English score test of meeting a proficient level or higher. A chef is in Group 3, and you will need to meet the usual requirements of competent English. Now that concludes the ACT nomination requirements. Don't forget that these are in addition to the Immigration Department's requirements. If you're applying as a 457 or 482 visa holder, you will not need to take a skilled assessment, but you will need one for the 491 visa anyway. A valid skill assessment is one of the main Immigration Department's requirements. You must first submit your expression of interest to the Immigration Department and select the ACT as your preference. You must then submit your interest to the ACT. The ACT calls this completing the Canberra matrix. If you are selected, you will be invited to apply to the ACT. This is where you provide evidence that you meet all the nomination criteria. If your ACT application is approved, then the Immigration Department will send you the invitation to apply for the 491 visa. If you are invited to apply to the ACT, it normally takes around 45 days, but this can vary depending on how busy they get. You will need to pay the application fee, which is currently at $300. The Canberra matrix is yet another points test, and it's not the same as the Skill Selects points test. You are not required to meet a minimum score for the Canberra matrix. The ACT uses this matrix to determine which applicants they wish to select, and as usual, the highest scoring applicants will get picked first. On the Canberra matrix, you are awarded scores for categories such as length of residence in the ACT, your English proficiency, your partner's English proficiency, if applicable, how long you and, if applicable, your partner has worked in the ACT, your education qualifications, if you have studied in a tertiary institution in the ACT, if you have any relatives in the ACT, and if you have significant assets in the ACT. The Canberra matrix is very detailed, and we plan to cover that in a separate video coming soon. It is similar to Skill Select because there are limited places and the ACT will choose the highest scores first, so you might be in the queue for a while. However, your matrix submission will expire after 6 months, and if it does, you will need to create a new one. Now we know this is a tough year for getting a visa, but it's not impossible. If you need help getting your visa or planning a pathway to permanent residency, do reach out to us. We offer Zoom and Skype and telephone consultations, so it doesn't matter where you are. You can always find more free resources on our ME News blog and on the AustralianVisa.com website. Follow us on Facebook before you leave, and do subscribe, and remember to turn on the notification bell and get your videos every week. So as always, take care out there, and I'll see you next time. So bye for now.